It hits you when everything is quiet. No noise, no tasks, no distractions. Just you, and the echo of a question you've been trying to outrun. What's the point of all this? You scroll your phone, check your messages, answer emails, eat, sleep, wake up, repeat. And still, the emptiness lingers like a dull ache behind your thoughts. You've done everything right, followed the rules, built the life they said would fulfill you. But somewhere along the way, the sparkle faded. Joy became muted. Moments feel like placeholders. Days bleed into each other, and you begin to wonder, not out loud, but in the quiet space between moments. Is this really all there is? This is existential anxiety. It doesn't come with panic attacks or tears. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It whispers when you stare at the ceiling at 3 a.m., when you celebrate something that should have made you happy, but doesn't, when you're surrounded by people, yet feel completely alone. It's not depression. It's not burnout. It's something deeper, a spiritual nausea, a soul-level discomfort with the absurdity of it all. We're born, we learn, we suffer, we chase dreams, we get older, and then we die. And no one tells you what it's all for. Religions try to answer it. Philosophers wrestle with it. Artists cry through it. And still, the silence remains. But what if that silence isn't something to fear? What if it's not a void, but an invitation? An invitation to stop running, to stop performing, to stop waiting for life to hand you meaning like a certificate of completion, and instead, to begin creating it. This is not a motivational talk. This is not a promise of answers. This is an exploration of the most terrifying and beautiful question a human being can ask. Why am I here? Let's go there, into the darkness, into the unknown, not to escape it, but to finally face it. There are two kinds of fear. The first is primal. It keeps you alive. The fear of falling, of loud noises, of immediate threats. It's physical, instinctual, tangible. But the second is quieter. It doesn't live in the body. It lives in the soul. It's not afraid of dying. It's afraid of living without meaning. This is existential anxiety. It doesn't show up when you're in danger. It shows up when you're safe, when your basic needs are met, when life has calmed down, and suddenly you're left with space to ask the questions you've been avoiding. What am I doing with my life? Who am I really? Is there a reason I'm here, or am I just passing time until I disappear? It is the awareness that one day, everything you've done, everything you've built, everything you've feared, loved or lost, will end. And what then? Søren Kierkegaard called it the sickness unto death. Not the death of the body, but the slow spiritual death of a self that refuses to become real. When we deny our freedom, our truth, our capacity to choose, we become split, anxious, hollow. Jean-Paul Sartre called it nausea, the disorientation of realizing that nothing has intrinsic meaning, that a chair is just wood, that a person is just matter, that life, stripped of illusions, is unbearably raw. Albert Camus called it the absurd, the tragic clash between our need for purpose and a universe that offers none. We search for answers, and the world is silent. That silence is what existential anxiety sounds like. But here's what they all understood. Existential anxiety is not a flaw. It's not a malfunction. It's the price of awareness. Only humans wrestle with meaning. Only humans gaze into the void and ask, what does this all mean? Does it mean anything at all? And in that question, we are gifted and cursed with freedom. The freedom to choose, to create, to rebel against nothingness by daring to live. Existential anxiety isn't here to destroy you. It's here to awaken you, to shake you from your distractions, to tear down the illusions, and to ask, with terrifying honesty, if life has no built-in meaning, what meaning will you give it? If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. Imagine pushing a boulder up a hill every day, straining, sweating, climbing, only to watch it roll back down, again, and then starting over. This is the myth of Sisyphus, and for the philosopher Albert Camus, it's the perfect image of the human condition. We live, we strive, we love, we build, and in the end, it all returns to dust. We seek meaning in a world that offers none, and that, Camus says, is the absurd, the conflict between our hunger for purpose and a universe that stays silent. It's like asking a mountain for answers. You scream into the sky and it never replies. So what do? Camus offered 3 options. Option 1, suicide. If life is meaningless, why go on? It's the darkest conclusion, and for Camus, the wrong one. Because while life may not offer meaning, it offers experience, and experience, he says, is worth living. Option 2, false hope. This is what many turn to, religion, ideology, or fantasy to silence the dread. But Camus saw this as philosophical suicide, denying reality in order to feel safe. Option 3, revolt, to live fully aware of the absurd and still choose life. To say, yes, it's meaningless, and still, I choose to create, not out of delusion, but out of defiance. Joy, not because life gives us answers, but because we dare to dance anyway. Now, the struggle itself, Camus wrote, is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. Happy, yes, because once we let go of the demand that life must have a purpose, we're finally free to live without illusion, to love what is, to create art, connection, experience, for their own sake. Not because they last forever, but because they exist now. Camus doesn't rob you of meaning. He robs you of fantasy, so that whatever meaning you do create is truly yours. The absurd isn't here to crush you. It's here to confront you with freedom. The boulder may still roll down, but how you push it, how you live, that is your rebellion. With those 3 words, Friedrich Nietzsche shattered the foundation of Western meaning. But he wasn't celebrating. He was mourning. Because Nietzsche saw what few were ready to admit. The old stories were dying. The heavens were empty. And beneath the rituals and rules, people were drifting, unanchored. God is dead, and we have killed him. Not a declaration of atheism, but a diagnosis of cultural collapse. For centuries, morality, identity, and purpose were given from above. Now, with the divine removed, Nietzsche asked, what replaces it? His answer wasn't comforting. He predicted nihilism, the slow unraveling of value, a world where nothing matters, where truth is subjective, where people numb themselves with comfort, conformity, and distraction. But Nietzsche didn't stop there. Where most saw emptiness, he saw a challenge to create your own meaning, to become the author of your values, to live as a creator, not a consumer. This is where his idea of the Übermensch, the overman, is born, not a tyrant, not a god, but a human being who transcends the need for external validation, who carves purpose out of chaos, who chooses responsibility over resignation. And then he poses the ultimate test, the eternal recurrence. Imagine living your life again and again, exactly the same way. Every thought, every regret, every moment. Would you scream, or would you say, yes, let it be so? This is not punishment, it's a mirror, a question. Are you living a life you'd willingly repeat? Because if not, something must change. Nietzsche doesn't give you answers. He gives you freedom, terrifying, beautiful freedom, and a choice. You can drift through life waiting for meaning to arrive, or you can build it through courage, creativity, love, through the radical act of becoming who you are without apology. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Nietzsche didn't destroy meaning. He handed you the chisel and whispered, "Now, carve your own." If anyone had the right to declare life meaningless, it was Viktor Frankl. He was a neurologist, a psychiatrist, a husband, and then a prisoner in Auschwitz. He watched friends and family taken. He suffered starvation, torture, humiliation. He stood on the edge of death day after day, and yet he survived. Not just physically, but spiritually. How? Not with hope, not with certainty, but with meaning. In the darkest place on earth, Frankl discovered this truth. Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how. Frankl wasn't naive. He didn't pretend suffering was noble. He knew it was brutal, senseless, and cruel. But he also saw something else. Not all who suffered died on the inside. Some collapsed, but others held on, not to pleasure, not to control, but to purpose. A father who stayed alive for his daughter, a man who found meaning in comforting others, a prisoner who composed poetry in his head to survive. Frankl called this the will to meaning, a force deeper than desire or power, the human capacity to transform suffering into spiritual resistance. And when he left the camp, he didn't just survive. He wrote the book that would help millions, Man's Search for Meaning. His message was simple but profound. Life never stops having meaning, even in pain. We don't get to choose our suffering, but we always get to choose our response. Frankl rejected the idea that humans are only pleasure-seeking. He believed we are meaning-seeking, and when we can't find it, we become anxious, addicted, numb. But when we do, even tragedy becomes bearable. This isn't romanticizing pain, it's reclaiming agency inside it. So if you're suffering, not just struggling but spiritually breaking, Frankl would ask you, what are you suffering for? What truth are you holding on to? What future, what love, what creative act is calling you to survive this moment? Because meaning isn't found in comfort, it's forged in fire, and sometimes the deepest purpose comes from the deepest pain. We live in the most connected time in human history, and yet we've never felt more lost. We carry entire worlds in our pockets, endless scrolls of entertainment, advice, validation. We have more access to knowledge, beauty, and people than any generation before us. And still, we ask, why does none of it feel like enough? Because beneath the noise, there's a silence we're running from. A silence that asks hard questions. A silence that reminds us of our mortality. A silence that whispers, what does this all mean? And we panic. So we fill the space. We drown it with TikToks. We stuff it with shopping carts. We hide it under productivity hacks and self-help slogans. We mistake movement for meaning, noise for purpose, stimulation for connection. But deep down, we know we are distracted, not fulfilled. The philosopher Blaise Pascal once wrote, all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. He said that in the 1600s. Now imagine what he'd say today. We don't just fear boredom, we fear stillness. Because in stillness, the illusions crack. The performance stops. The truth shows up, uninvited, and it asks, are you living or just surviving? Are you consuming or creating? Are you chasing comfort or avoiding truth? Modern life has mastered distraction, but it's losing its grip on depth. We're numbed by choice, overstimulated by options, and quietly starving for something real, something with soul, something with substance, something that says, you're not just here to consume, you're here to become. And the crisis isn't that life is meaningless, it's that we've forgotten how to sit with the question long enough to hear an answer. Because answers don't scream, they wait in silence, in the parts of life we no longer visit, long walks, uncomfortable conversations, books without highlights, grief that isn't solved, joy that isn't posted. If you feel empty in a world this full, you're not broken. You're being called inward, not to escape life, but to reclaim it. We grow up believing that meaning is something we'll find, as if it's buried under the right job, the right person, the right amount of success. We think it will arrive, one day, fully formed, like a prize for good behavior. But meaning doesn't come from outside. It's not found. It's created. And that shift changes everything, because it means you're not waiting anymore. You're not searching for some divine blueprint. You're building something sacred out of the raw material of your life. Søren Kierkegaard, the father of existentialism, put it this way: the most painful state of being is remembering the future, particularly the one you'll never have. He believed despair came from refusing to be ourselves, from wearing masks, chasing approval, living lies. Meaning, he said, begins when we stop running and stand in truth, even if it breaks us first. So, where do we begin? Not in certainty, not in perfection, but in honest living. You create meaning every time you act with integrity, every time you choose love over ego, every time you create something no one asked for, but your soul needed to express. You create meaning in small things, in the way you hold space for someone's pain, in the decision to grow when it would be easier to shut down, in the moments of beauty you notice, even when the world feels dark. Meaning is not a destination. It's a relationship with yourself, with others, with the mystery of being alive. And sometimes it's not even loud. It's quiet, subtle, a feeling in your chest when you speak the truth, a sense of alignment when you follow your curiosity instead of your conditioning. The world may never tell you your life matters, but you don't need permission to make it meaningful, because in a universe without guarantees, meaning becomes your rebellion, not to escape death, but to make life worth dying for. Some questions don't have answers, not because they're unimportant, but because they're too vast for language, too sacred for finality. Why am I here? What's the point? Does any of this mean anything? You can spend a lifetime trying to answer them, or you can do something far more courageous. You can choose to live with them. The philosopher Rainer Maria Rilke once wrote, "Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves. Live the questions now. Perhaps then, someday far in the future, you will gradually, without even noticing it, live your way into the answer." This is not passivity. This is presence. To walk through life without needing certainty. To love without guarantees. To create without knowing if it matters. To exist fully in the mystery. We were taught that life is a riddle to solve. But what if it's a poem? What if it's not meant to be solved but felt? We want the sky to write our purpose in bold letters. But sometimes the answer is quieter. Sometimes it sounds like the laughter of someone you love, the silence after a long cry, the brush of wind on your face as you walk toward a life that finally feels real. Meaning isn't always grand. Sometimes it's in the trying, sometimes it's in the being. But you may never know why you exist, but you can decide how you exist, with integrity, with wonder, with courage, with love, not because the universe demands it, but because you do. You are the question, and the way you live, That's the answer. So breathe. Let go of the chase for certainty. Let go of the fear of the unknown. And instead, stand inside the question. Live it, shape it, honor it. Because in the end, maybe life has no meaning until you give it one.